I saw Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim.
Oh, that came out.
I saw it in theaters. I didn't know too much about it. I knew that there's a Lord of the Rings movie coming out. I was kind of like blindsided by it, actually. I was like, what's coming out? Lord of the what? Because I just saw Rings of Power for like a couple of seasons and it was really miserable. And it's like, oh, it's made by Warner Brothers. Okay, so what does that mean exactly? And I just figured, I was like, this is just some like HBO Max fodder, right?
Yeah.
And they put it out in theaters for some reason. So the whole thing was intriguing, and I saw a few reviews of it, mixed opinions, and noticed it was anime, and so I was like, well, I'm probably not going to enjoy this very much. But I felt like I owed it to myself to go see if a Lord of the Rings movie is in theaters, like I should probably go check it out. So I was surprised on a number of levels. For one thing, and this is big, the movie goes out of its way to make sure you know that this anime takes place in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings.
Oh, they're like bitches, we're not that dollar store Rings of Power shit.
It's like, not only are we Lord of the Rings, we're that Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah, we're the good one. Come on, guys, come back to us.
Like like the Lord of the Rings title that comes up in every movie, the like they do that. They have a female narrator like Kate Blanchett, and it's Miranda Otto who played Éowyn in Two Towers and Return of the King. So she's a daughter of Rohan, so of course, like, it's appropriate. A lot of the movie takes place at Edoras and at Helm's Deep, and it's very distinctly like it's these beautiful, giant, vast. I don't even really know how to describe it because like it's all 2D anime style animation. And yet some of those background paintings really did feel theatrical. They really felt like you needed to watch it on a big 4K screen or something.
Okay.
Like there was something maybe kind of like multi-layered about it that made it feel like, oh, wow, this is big. And I would also say that the sound design throughout the whole thing, there's a lot of warring going on and a lot of battling in the movie. And the hits and the bone crunches and the slams and the wood slamming into wood. And like you really are like get that in the theater. The story is kind of low stakes. It's like, I think it was only 2 hours or so, 2 hours and 10 minutes, something like that. It's like a pretty brisk for a Lord of the Rings movie, for what we've come to know as a Lord of the Rings movie. And it's not that different, actually, in some ways from Mufasa, where it's like a sitting king is antagonized by somebody who would do him wrong, coaxes him into a fight, and then he accidentally kills the guy, and now he invites onto his people this giant thing. So our story starts at Edoras, which is where the Hall of the King of Rohan is. That's where we meet Theoden and Two Towers, right? And it's distinctly, the same banners are hung up. It's meticulously the thing that you saw in those movies, which is really cool to see. Oh, and Howard Shore's music's all over the place too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, da 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 da. That's throughout the whole movie. So, yes, it's animated. I don't know. It didn't really, it felt like it was anime, but it felt like it was more like...
It's a Western anime.
In service, yeah. I believe it was a Japanese director, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Oh, wow.
Not sure exactly what
like Star Wars Visions.
It didn't feel that. It really didn't feel that anime. What it felt like to me was like a really amazing storyboard for what could have been a live action film. Like, there's no reason this couldn't be a live action film. And I think a staple of I'm gonna piss people off, but I think a staple of like anime dubbing is that the American actors are never very good. Well, it's very clear this started with the English speaking actors, right? Because it's an English tale, and their performances across the board are all excellent.
Age has not improved your manners, my liege.
Yeah, so we started at Edoras, and these guys from one of the hill tribes, there's all these hill tribes, and they'll kind of turn into the wicked men who ally with Mordor. They're trying to get their son to marry the king's daughter, who's going to be our main character, Hera. The king is Helm. So if you remember from Two Towers, the horn of Helm Hammerhand is a reference they make. And it's, of course, Helm's Deep. Well, so this is King Helm. This is who we're talking about. It's about 150 years prior to the events of Lord of the Rings. And they're like, hey, like, we want to marry our son to you and we want to ally. But really they want to take the throne. And he's this big fucking jacked dude. And he, it gets heated where they're going to get in a fight. And he's like, why don't we step outside? Because, I don't want to shed blood in my halls. And they go outside and the hill tribe guy attacks first. And then Helm gives him one punch and he kills the guy in one punch, and he didn't mean to. And so that he gets the name Helm Hammerhand. And the son who was going to be married to the girl, they were childhood friends, he and the girl. He swears vengeance against Rohan, and he starts allying as many Hill Tribes people as he can against Rohan. He basically goes completely crazy with like, I'm going to kill these people. And he turns a lot of the sitting crowned people into refugees. They retreat to the Hornburg, which would later be renamed Helm's Deep, because that's where Helm brought his people. It was originally called the Hornburg. But it's very, it's very obviously Helm's Deep when the story gets there. And a number of battles and betrayals and, Game of Thrones-y type stuff happen. It feels actually very Game of Thrones, I think, throughout all of it. Probably more Game of Thrones than Lord of the Rings. It just in terms of like betrayal and backstabbing. And
is it more Game of Thrones than Rings of Power? Because they were definitely trying to do that.
Yeah. I mean, this whole thing is better than Rings of Power. I'm here to tell you, like, this Rings of Power just feels like dumpy. It feels like goofy and stupid. And,
I dropped my crystal ball in the market.
Yeah. The thing with Gandalf, there's a shoe leather and explaining the most minor of things. And parts of it just felt like straight up, I remember just the dialogue going on forever. This is just 2 hours of brutality, basically.
Oh, okay.
And there's one, so spoilers, there's one sequence that's especially awesome, which is they capture the king's boys and he's like, hey, like, I'll make you king. I'll trade the crown for my boys. Just don't kill my boys. And the guy is on such a vengeful warpath. He kills the boys and they basically fire upon the king. And he goes to the medical tent with his people and he disappears one night. And they're like, what happened to King Helm? And then like his enemies start being like, we saw a wraith. It's Helm. We swear, because they think he's dead. Like he's back from the dead. He's out there in the freezing, blistering, blizzarding cold with basically no shirt on, with his giant jacked arms. And he's just killing his enemies just with his bare fists and just striking fear into everybody.
Rohan still stands! Helm Hammerhand!
And he dies in front of that giant gate in Helm's Deep. He dies in front of it. He freezes in place just while in the middle of pummeling people.
Metal.
And they're like, King Helm was found dead, standing tall mid-battle with his knees unbent. It's like, that's so badass.
Metal. That's metal.
Yeah, very metal. Yeah, it's very like Scandinavian metal. And there's like his daughter, in a very anime type of way. She has like a final battle in like a bride's dress and stuff. But yeah, I probably would never watch it ever again. I'm not sure I would recommend it unless you were just kind of curious. So what I found later was this was indeed, I don't know if it was in a rush, but it was made to retain rights. They needed to make a theatrical Lord of the Rings movie. I hear it did like crap at the box office.
Yeah.
And but like Philippa Boyens, she was one of the writers of the original trilogy. She wrote the story to this, so she was kind of involved. Peter Jackson's an executive producer on this. I think I liked the movie better than like Desolation of Smog. Like I'd probably watch this before that. It wasn't that bad, really. Oh, there's another cool thing about it. The Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings cartoon? Oh, Mr. Frodo, we're going to see the elves. Oh, my.
Me go, sir. Me go and see the elves. Oh, my. Oh, hooray.
They're mo-capped, and it feels especially like at the end of that movie, in the Helm's Deep battle, everything's fucking like it's not even mo-capped because they didn't have such a thing back then, but it was, rotoscoped, but it wasn't, it seemed more to me like they found some cheap ass way to just make live action people kind of sort of look animated. It looked like they were just like, I don't know how we're going to animate a battle. And so we're just going to, and it's due on Tuesday. So we're just going to like cheese our way through this. Well, it's obvious that, especially for the big crowd and battle sequences, they had mo-capped people in this, which really does again, that's like another kind of art thing that distinguishes it, I feel like, from anime. And they would often be faceless. So like, they didn't bother drawing their faces. So these faceless mocap guys, it feels a little bit like a Ralph Bakshi movie. I was like, this is kind of cool.
Throwback.
This is kind of cool that this actually, you could sort of watch that movie and then this movie as a double feature. Saruman shows up at the very end and it's Christopher Lee's voice.
Oh, they got some samples.
Yeah, they did something. Maybe they AI'd his Christmas metal music or something. They did like a Gandalf tease. It was very stupid. They're like, who is this wizard? He goes by many names. It was a bit like Rings of Power, actually. Yeah, they said that Weta did all the concept art. So Weta was involved. So again, another thing that kind of makes it like a little bit unique. They attributed the whole thing to Bernard Hill, who of course played Theoden. And there was even their credits. Like if you remember the Return of the King credits had like concept art or like illustrations of the actors set to like the Annie Lennox song. Well, they did like something like that here too. They have illustrations and they played this new kind of pop song called Where is the Rider? It's actually, it sounds like a Scandinavian kind of battle song. It's actually beautiful. There's some eagles that show up and save the day in this thing too. I guess I'd say check it out. I don't know. Yeah, there's enough here. It's an interesting little relic, certainly.
Yeah, just to retain rights, you gotta put something together.
Yeah, but it didn't feel like it felt like they were like, if we're gonna make something, it ought to be unique in some way. Well, actually, my other thought was like, well, even though this is kind of mediocre in a lot of ways, if you insisted on keeping the Lord of the Rings franchise making things and staying alive, doing some animated features for streaming, I think it's cool. Like, give somebody a chance to make a 2-hour movie and see if it works. And that's what I think they should have done all along. I think that's what they should have done with Star Wars.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just try stuff. And because I don't know about you, for some reason, like a non-canon animated movie doesn't offend me.
Yeah. And if it's really good, then make it canon.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And that you could make sequels to it or something. You could like
you could easily do this again and be like, this time it's going to be about like the dwarves. All right. Next time it's going to be about Gondor or something. You could do it.
Yeah. Because it's like the Penguin, the Penguin was really successful. They'll probably do a season 2 and it's going to stand apart from James Gunn and nobody's going to be that pissed. Right.
Because it's good.
One ring to rule them all.
One ring to find them.
One ring to bring them all.
And in the darkness bind them. Yes, Sue!
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon or become a YouTube member for full episodes every other week.